Is this thing working? Are we live? It looks like we're live. What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. If you are new to the live show, welcome to our own little slice of YouTube. Basically, this is a background noise generator, primarily chatting about motorcycles, sometimes dabble into car stuff, other stuff as well. So, huge shout out to my folks that are driving trucks, working a lathe, doing yard work, whatever the case is. Hope you're having a good one. And if you're listening to this before you nod off, sweet dreams and have an awesome tomorrow. So, we are going to chat tonight about a pretty exciting topic, at least for a lot of guys in the sport bike world. And that is that Suzuki have finally released the prices of the GSXR 1000, kind of new for 2027. And it's the first time that Suzuki has had any, well, I would say major changes to any of their bikes, but realistically, any changes worth talking about in a very, very long time. So this is kind of a cool topic. Shout out to all my Suzuki brethren and alumnus. Now, it works out kind of like this. Suzuki in 2017 released the GSXR 1000, and it was basically an update to a previous generation. Don't really need to get mired in the weeds on that, but what it brought to the table was class leading bottom end power and mid range power. This is a world where, talking about leader bikes here, where they're all extremely powerful. The most powerful versus the least powerful, it's an academic exercise. They're all extremely strong. So how do you differentiate yourself one from the next? Well, you've got to have some kind of gimmick. And in this case, Suzuki has a variable intake cam, which, by the way, is ingenious in its simplicity. And what it allows that motorcycle to do is to keep some really strong top end horsepower, usually top in the class, at least with the Japanese bikes, or close to it. But it allows the GSXR 1000 to retain one of its calling card traits, which is its torque. Suzuki has always been known, if it didn't make peak horsepower, so be it, but they always made the best power down low, and they always had the best mid-range of any of the bikes that they were in the class with. And that is what that variable intake cam has allowed the Gixxer to do. And that's awesome, right? But the thing is that since 2027, other motorcycles have come into the fray, the BMW S1000R, namely, but that's really the only bike in the class that can hang with the GSXR 1000, at least the previous generation, through the mid-range, and it was beating that Suzuki, though, at its own game. This is an area where the Kawasaki makes more horsepower. The Yamaha makes more horsepower technically on a dyno chart, but it's how the bike gets down the road. We don't ride these things on paper, and we don't ride them on dynos. So I guess the point to all of this is Suzuki have come to the table with some changes to this bike. Will there be a price increase to go along with it? Now, these are all changes that they've made to homologate the GSXR 1000 into some racing series, presumably anyway, and to make this motorcycle Euro 5 plus compliant. Now, what does all of this stuff mean? How does that affect power? Well, it works out like this. Euro 5 plus for emission standards is more strict. And in that, one of the key ways to help make a motorcycle, or any engine for that matter, achieve better overall EPA figures is to make the camshafts smaller, less duration, less overlap. In other words, less time for the intake valve to be open at the same time as the exhaust valve. And what that does is it reduces the amount of unburnt fuel in the exhaust, thus, I guess, making the air cleaner, if they say so. But to do that and retain power, though, what do? Well, you've got to make other components better. You've got to put bigger throttle bodies on the bike, which Suzuki have done. They've made the exhaust valve larger to deal with a wider lobe separation. That's pretty cool too. They've done some things to the bike to make it more appealing to the racer. They've bumped compression from, if I remember correctly, 13.2 to now 13.8. There's a lot of stuff going on with this bike. From a racer's point of view, look great, but the camshafts, right? But this has been kind of a weird thing that I've noticed. Motorcycles that I have ridden that are Euro 5 plus compliant, you know what's weird is that they always seem to be strong running bikes. In fact, stronger than the outgoing bike, and especially in one key area, and that is in bottom end and mid-range power. If you gave up 1 or 2 horsepower on the big end on the far right-hand side of the tack, but because of a smaller camshaft profile and larger throttle bodies, bigger exhaust valve, and everything that's coming with that, you may be able to not only keep the horsepower that you had, pick up a bunch of mid-range and power down low, all the while delivering the power a bit more smoothly, which is how I think this is going to play out. And this is what happened with the Hayabusa for the Gen 4, where guys were talking about, or Gen 3, whatever it is. Anyway, the guys were complaining that the Euro 5 bike, well, it just didn't make as much horsepower, but then you would ride it, and all of a sudden, the newer bike was actually the better bike to ride. I put that to the test, and even I was proven wrong. So, ate some crow on that day, fell in love with the Hayabusa in its lower horsepower configuration because it was smoother and made more mid-range power. And I think that's what we're going to see with the Suzuki. And I'm looking forward to throwing a leg over this thing. I am a Suzuki GSXR 1000 alumnus. It's one of my favorite leader bikes. And when that bike is set up properly with the suspension, the A model, by the way, not the R model, but with an A model, a standard model set up properly with the right tune, it's actually a phenomenal bike to spend time with. And will this new Gixxer be able to give us the same level of excitement that the older bikes did? I don't know. That's yet to be seen. But I will say this. What has been seen is the price of the bike. And we're in good shape here because it looks like the bike didn't really go up any in price. Base model is checking in somewhere around 16,400 if memory serves me correctly. And the R model, that's what you want, is going to be about just shy of 18,000. I really should have already had this queued up, but we're going to go ahead and get it pulled up anyway. So we're going to take a look at these bikes. We're going to look at some of the pricing. Let some of you guys get into. Do not want the RS. Hold, please. The RS version of it, guys, just has some winglets and a rear seat cowl. Those are, for me anyway, those are just like accessory mods. I'm really not concerning myself with that. We're going to look at the GSXR. Here we go. Goodness gracious, it's taking us forever to get here. And here is your pricing. Let me get you guys queued up and I will share the screen with you. And here we go. So for the base model, you're looking at $16,400. On the surface, that's a really good price. So what exactly does that mean? Well, you're getting a leader bike, a bona fide, dyed-in-the-wool, basically the embodiment of all that is leader bike for some guys, that's not called a Yamaha R1, all wrapped up for less than $16,500 before freight, prep, and tax. That is a smoking deal for this bike. Now, again, if you are more inclined to want to have an R model, which for me, not really my cup of tea, but the R model is checking in at just shy of $18,000. So again, given what you've got with the R model, which again, if you're a lighter rider, is the better bike for you, quite frankly, then you're still sub $18,000. And to give you an idea, that's right in line with where a base model Yamaha R1 is. And Well, getting back to the standard bike, interestingly enough, like I said, it's a leader bike for just the other side of $16,000. KTM RCR 990 with the technology pack is about that expensive. I mean, it's as close. It doesn't really matter. Let's be honest with ourselves. I mean, if you're spending 16, you can spend 15, or 15, you can spend 16, I should say. And so we've got a bike here that, yeah, $16,300, you get a bona fide leader bike. And this is in a world where the V2 Panigale is a $17,000 bike. Which one would you rather have? I know what I would pick. I'd pick a standard model GSXR 1000 and never look back. The thing is that value per dollar, this is going to be a strong player. The only thing, I guess, that could potentially turn some folks off is the lack of a TFT. Now, we're going to talk about the technology suite on these bikes, but to do that, I've got to start out with the low-hanging fruit, and that is the fact that this bike, with all of the updates, upgrades, and everything else have gone into this engine, and the fact that Suzuki offer a TFT screen in every other bike that's not called the Hayabusa, I think, and the Gixxer middleweights that's made. In other words, if it ain't a legacy bike, it's got a TFT. But this thing, it's still going to make out with the traditional LCD screen. Now, is that a bad thing? I mean, it's a screen and it does tell you everything that you need to know. But in this day and age, you got to have a TFT, even if it's as entry level as the Yamaha R1. The entry level, any entry level TFT is miles and away better than an LCD screen. Now, with that being said, yes, I know you can get an aftermarket plug and play solution for that, but that's a freaking $1,000 or $1,500 thing. And in a world where TFT screens are so ubiquitous, it should be able to just, you could freaking trip over one walking outside of your house. They're not expensive. It's not high-end technology. Why this bike still doesn't have that blows my mind. Maybe one day, but right now they won't. But in saying all of that, I do want to talk about the technology suite with this bike and why it is that so many Gixxer loyalists are a little bit worried about this bike. So let me dive in here real quick. RMAC is in saying, what's up, Professor? What's up, man? Saying nice R1. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're gonna be talking about the R1 here in just a second. RMAC saying, or Pilot saying, hey friends. RMAC saying, hey Squid. DM's checking in. Good evening, B and chat friends. Got the ball guy with the flex and the specs. I like it. You could say it was a power bottom. That's funny. CF Moto also did a show where they had a real 750 release and price in Malaysia. Very nice. I will need to check that out. Yeah, we're all waiting for that America release for the CF Moto stuff. It's going to turn out to be pretty nice. We can talk about that bike a little bit too, because that bike to me is going to be the bike that puts the biggest hurting on our favorite middleweight, the Gixxer 750. Saying it could be a long wait. Hopefully they can get it here. That's the thing. Paulo's saying, I'm surprised they didn't jack those prices up. Same. And we're going to keep talking about that. Meg said, I really want a leader bike from CF Moto. Yeah, me too. Paul saying, thing about a 1K CF Moto is it makes me question is CF Moto is very appealing to newish riders, but probably not as much to seasoned ones. Here's the thing. The CF Moto, they're good all the way around. They're only attracting younger riders in some senses because of their price point. But remember that they're offering up a motorcycle that younger riders want. And most of the time, younger riders know the type of bike that they want. Leader bikes are typically their own level of turnoff. And to be quite honest, most guys, when it kind of gets to push come to shove, they humble themselves pretty quickly. And a leader bike from CF Moto would just do nothing more than give a next step up for somebody with, say, a 675 that wanted to go a little bit faster, wanted something a bit more powerful, and wanted to stay within the CF Moto brand because of all the technology that you get. Carlos is asking, have they said anything about the GSXR 750 for 2027? Yes, they have. I've seen the new 2027 colorways, but that's all you're going to get. 2027 is only a colorway change. There's a dashing red and white and a black and blue color scheme for 2027. Nothing put in play for 2028. DM saying a TFT screen may not be the reason to buy the bike, but it's like buying a new vehicle with a cassette and CD player instead of a CarPlay. Isn't that the truth? See, that's the thing. And this is what Suzuki have done for years. They've got arguably the best burger and fries in the business when it comes to the staples, right? When it comes to the Gixxer middleweights and when it comes to the Hayabusa. And they keep turning out in the rinse and repeat process because folks keep buying it. And it really is that good, but tastes change, times change, and everything else that comes with that. And you end up in a situation where to remain relevant and at least not the butt of a joke or the recipient of a jeer, you've got to update, upgrade, especially with these bikes, because these are supposed to be the tip of the spear when it comes to technology, innovation, when it comes to all the things that you would expect to be cutting edge. These are the motorcycles you would expect that to be found with. And Suzuki, a little bit late to the party. Stokes saying, man, I just released a short video yesterday about the pricing and the 3 different versions. Very nice. Welcome to this version of that topic. Policy, I don't see anyone picking a 675 over a Super Sport 600. Similarly, I don't see most people buying a CF Moto over a Aprilia Ducati, which is exactly the point. If you look at CF Moto and the bikes that they make, they're not making bikes for the riding enthusiast, the guy that is going to be real detailed about suspension setups and the overall build out of the bike. They're building bikes for folks that want something sporty, something cool, something that's got technology, something that sounds good. Yeah, I get it. These guys may not ever get the bike on the side of the tire. That's totally cool. That's not everybody is going to do that. And that's where the CF Motos really do kind of come into play. And in other cases you can, and that's the beauty of it. Think about how much fun a 675 would be pipe tuned like Armac's bike on track. Put a good set of tires on it, get out there and do, 3, 4, 5, 20-minute sessions. Don't worry about your lap time. Just get the thing on the side of the tire, slide it around some corners and have some fun. Stokes saying, kudos to Suzuki for actually lowering the price. Indeed. Apollo's hanging out with Armac. Oh, that's good news for you. It will probably be the cheapest leader bike. It's going to have a lot of features. It may not be the most powerful. It won't be the lightest, but that doesn't really matter. Again, it's going to make good noises and it's going to be plenty fast, and fast enough in this game is all you need. And here's the funny thing. So getting back to the bike itself, there are a lot of changes that Suzuki have made to this bike, but they've made some interesting choices here with the changes that they've made outside of the homologation stuff, more compression, valves, and all that. I'm going to try to show you guys something. This is something that I love about Suzuki, and this is something that I would have loved to have had a little bit different with my R1. I'm going to zoom this in. And guys, do me a favor. Is this zoomed in on your side too? Did the thing zoom in? I just want to make sure because I want to point out something here for you guys that that I think is kind of cool that Suzuki is doing. Okay, Paulo's saying it zoomed in. Okay, focus on where the R is, the big R, right? That right there, the exhaust component that's still underneath the cowl, that's the catalytic converter. That looks like that hasn't changed. But what I want you to notice is the can where it bolts to that catalytic converter. And just realize this, the exit valve, which is the exhaust valve, is connected, that's right, to your can. So why that is cool is that you can still put a slip on this thing. Now you're going to need a servo buddy so that you can make sure you don't have any servo codes, but presumably you can put a slip on this thing and do away with basically what is in essence about 8 or 9 pounds worth of exhaust pipe. And the funny thing about it is that these newer bikes, you notice that there's these 2 pipes here. The way that this exhaust system works, because you might be looking at that going, what in the world is going on there? This is what's going on. The bottom pipe is the pipe that's always open. That pipe is never blocked off by a butterfly valve, and it is as big around as my thumb. And I can show you on the R1's stock exhaust that that's how this works. The butterfly valve, when the bike comes in under load, will open up, and now you've got all of that pipe that is going to flow. That's where you're going to get your sound, and that's where you're going to get your performance. But until that thing opens up, that engine is only breathing through this bottom pipe, and this bike is going to be obnoxiously quiet, just like my R1. It was just so quiet that it was, are you kidding me? So anyway, that's how that system works. But a cool thing that they've done, and this is again kind of a cool Suzuki trait, you don't have to replace a whole lot of working material to have some sound, and you can still be emissions compliant if that is important to you. So I wanted to point that out because I thought that that was something worth taking a look at and worth mentioning. Again, it's Suzuki doing something that's pretty cool. Another thing that they've done, and this is something you talk about at some point, you got to switch this around. Suzuki, but they have gone, you can barely make it out, but they've gone to, this is going to be an LED stock for your turn signals. That's something that I think most guys are going to swap out immediately with like some hot bodies or whatever the case is. So there's that. But again, for the guys that are just wanting to ride the bike, do some minor modifications, get it out and have a blast with it, that's going to be a pretty cool thing. Plus, if you're taking the pipe off, you probably want to take the whole exit system out of there anyway. That's going to save you about a pound of weight. Not that it matters, but every weight counts. Every ounce counts when you're looking at weight. I'll get there eventually. But yeah, to get some noise out of it, that is going to be a must. It's another cool thing is that it, in essence, is the same bike though in every other sense of looking at it. The standard bike hasn't changed. The R model hasn't changed in terms of suspension, in terms of body work. All of that is still the same wheels, same brakes, all that's still the same. I'm curious though, you know, we're talking about brakes, we're talking about everything else about this bike. I'm curious as to how this bike really is going to get down the road once you start looking at it from a point of this new, you know, the revised camshafts and everything else, with all of that being so different and it being down a little bit in power on paper. What's this bike going to be like to ride? Very curious about that, because we can talk about the power of these things. We can talk about, you know, all the technology that it has or doesn't have. But one thing's for sure, and it does have a new technology suite. And this is where a lot of guys are getting a little bit, they're a little bit apprehensive. So let's dive into this. What do I mean? Well, the 2017 to 2025 GSXR 1000 had a lot of rider aids available. It had 10 different levels of traction control, which incorporated wheelie control along with that. You had multiple power modes, A, B, and C. And so, because of that, you had a lot of flexibility for different conditions, different rider confidence levels, different rider preferences. The new bike is a little bit different. The new bike is going to have a more proactive system. What exactly does that mean? Well, the old bike, the traction control system really wouldn't kick in unless it found that there was something a little bit weird going on with the bike. Now, there were some times where, like, the quick shifter might not have worked properly when you were at a steep lean angle. That is a more proactive aspect of how the Gixxer would try to keep the rider in check. But it's an aspect that we're hoping has been kind of done away with if it's more proactive, because the reactive systems, well, they can be a bit more fun to ride. Even though there's some quirks with the quick shifter, in general, being able to put power down on corner exit and do fun little power wheelies in A1 mode, that is a Gixxer 1000 calling card. Proactive systems just don't allow for any of that. They limit throttle input, especially on the side of the tire. And as it has been advertised, the traction control system in A1 for the GSXR 1000 will limit throttle total input to 80%. That's very similar to the Yamaha R1, where even in its most aggressive state, when you're on the side of the tire, when I go to roll into the throttle nice and hard, there's a lot of power there, but it's not all the power. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think that it's pretty cool that that aspect of a nanny, if you will, is really a more passive rider aid. You lean the bike over really far, you just don't get all the power available to you. It helps you in the event of accidentally grabbing too much throttle on corner exit, getting the bike sliding around. It just helps the process along a little bit of getting you through a corner. But there's some folks that are concerned that that level of nannyage is going to take a lot of the rawness out of the GSXR 1000. Now, look, I'm happy to report that of the leader bikes that I've ridden, my R1 is easily my favorite. And I've had two GSXR 1000s, one 2018 and one 2025. And I loved my 2025. My base model 2025 still has its suspension set up on my whiteboard up here. I mean, it's all still there. So, and it's been a hot minute since I've had that bike. Wonder why I've kept it up there for so long. Not sure. But I'll tell you this, I loved it with the More Mafia tune and even just an M4 slip-on. That bike was very fun to ride, very strong. And I can tell you from experience that one of the most adorable leader bikes that I've ever ridden as standard, not modified, is the GSXR 1000, because it was so playful as a stock bike. Now, once you start piping and tuning a GSXR 1000, there's some of that playfulness kind of gives way to a bit more of adult fun, kind of an experience. With the power that this thing can make down low, it's very easy to get wrapped up in just playing with that wave of torque, because it really does get stepped up quite a bit once you put an exhaust and a tune on the bike. But that's kind of neither here nor there. The idea is that my R1 from the factory felt a bit nerfed with the throttle. And you can really feel it in first and second gear. And although the bike was very new and I wasn't out really hammering on the thing, one of the things that I did notice about that bike is that I was always a gear lower. So now when I'm in second gear coming through our favorite Missouri turnaround, I am not in first gear anymore. I'm in second because I can really put the power down. Before, it just wouldn't do that. So shout out to More Mafia and the throttle mapping, because now that R1 easily the best. But it's only the best because the Gixxer 1000 stock is also really, really good. So where am I going with all this? Well, it works out like this. we're not going to know what this bike is like to ride with all of this new rider aid technology until they land. And as it is basically the middle of July, as this live show is being taped, do you still say taped? As this video is going live, we're still looking at about a month before these bikes start to land in dealerships. And I'm looking forward to sampling all that is the sweet goodness of the new GSXR 1000 and bringing it to you. But I'm not doing this without a certain sense of trepidation myself. I know how good this bike is going to be. And by all accounts, folks are saying that it's even punchier down low and through the mid-range than it was before. Could this be the new most friendly, easiest to ride leader bike that you can buy for what is in essence super middleweight pricing? Well, that might be what we're looking at here, because again, the standard GSXR 1000, which by the way, in my opinion, is the best of the group. Again, it's only $16,400. Now, this is what I wanted to bring up, and I don't know why I didn't do this either, but it's the pricing of the rest of the class, if you will, right? The first one that's going to come to mind is, well, quite frankly, is going to be the KTM, because the KTM is the most expensive of the bikes. So here we go. 2026 KTM 990 RCR. MSRP is $14,000. But here's the thing. It's not $14,000, is it? Because you still have to buy the technology pack if you want to have a quick shifter and have all of the rest of the stuff to go along with it. That's another $1,000. So instead of $14,000, that's $15,000. If you're spending $15,000 on a KTM, would you rather have the KTM with 130 horsepower and a really pretty TFT screen? Or would you rather spend about $1,500 more and get a bike that is significantly more powerful, depending on which number you want to believe? I can tell you that the KTM will put down somewhere around 120 horsepower to the rear tire from the factory, give or take, de-restricted. You could maybe get on the low level 160 horsepower out of the GSXR 1000. Okay, 33% more horsepower for $1,500. Yeah, I think that you would probably take that, but I don't know. That's literally up to you to decide, dear viewer. Hang on just a second. I was saying, by the way, I think the GSXR 1000 is the best balanced leader bike, and I'm glad to have one. I love them. I love them. They don't fit me. I don't fit on the GSXR 1000 as well as I do the R1, but that's not to say that they don't get me around just fine. I like them a lot. It's my number 2 favorite leader bike. Carlos saying, okay, as expected, but good to know they'll still going to be selling it and not killing it off. Very true. Paulo's checking in. Saying yes to the Zoom. Paulo saying, I hate those turn signals. They should have mounted them in the mirrors. Yeah, I agree. The thing is, this is the problem. Let me get out of it. I just wanted to illustrate and serve to you the pricing on this RCR. I mean, it's just high technology. I get it. It's a great bike, easy to ride, probably a better street bike for a lot of guys, but you're so close in price now to a super middleweight with the Gixxer. It's like, hang on, I just saw Paul's response. So best middleweight for the price is a leader bike. Got it. Indeed. That's kind of it. Stokes saying the 25 GSXR 1000 is the one I have also. Phenomenal bike for sure. Very phenomenal bike. Love them. And again, in stock form or just de-restricted without a, the exhaust and everything else that really does nothing more than throws up the power down low and in the mid range, which the bike doesn't really need a lot more of anyway. That bike is so nice. Matter of fact, that bike with a tune, but in B mode that still goes to 100% is really cherry. I was saying, don't forget that torque. Yeah, for sure. Um, I was saying, I got on throttle on my 600 earlier today, going 30 in first, pulled a handful, maybe 70%. And as I was accelerating, rear completely broke traction and scared me a bit. Traction control would have been nice. Nah, that just teaches you how to live, baby. No, I love it. Listen, the 600, you know that little sister had the record for the longest rolling burnout for a long time until the R9 beat it or came very close to. Paul is saying, don't forget the crazy torque on the KTM. See, here's the thing though, right? So I would agree with you on the K. Well, yeah, first of all, don't forget the crazy torque on the KTM, just like you don't forget the crazy torque on the R9. And here's the other thing. They make that crazy torque way down low. The super middleweights are kind of an anomaly because they don't look good on paper in some cases. I mean, they do, they don't. But they really don't look good when you put them up against a GSXR 750, which admittedly isn't really in the same class, but it's nerfed a little bit to be in the same class. So from a roll race perspective, they look like they're terrible. But from a riding position, just riding the thing around and having fun with it, it's actually a really good bike. And I would even go so far as to say for a lot of guys, it's a superior bike to like a GSXR 750, which is phenomenal in its own way. And it'll disappear over the horizon compared to one of these bikes in a roll race. But unless you're roll racing a lot, that doesn't really matter so much now, does it? So yeah, these bikes have got a ton of torque and are very strong on corner exit. So it just kind of depends on what you're up to. But for $1,500, I think I would probably take that Gixxer a lot. RMAX saying that's a damn price on a leader bike for sure. RMAX saying if CF Moto took 990 RCR and rebadged and added CF Moto styling and paint to it, I would buy one as long as they stick how they price things. Yeah, I get it. Here's the thing: KTM is turning a lot of folks off with this this technology pack. You've got it for 30 days or 90 days, whatever it is. They need to do away with that. Stop it. Don't do that. That's not necessary. Give everybody what they're buying. Give everybody what they're paying for $14,000, because a $16,000 Gixxer versus a $15,000 KTM. Yeesh. I mean, think about that for just a second. Paulo saying, yeah, the 990 it's 947. It's close enough to 1,000. Well, I mean, look at the same kind of goes in essence for the 890 Ducati V twin and the 890 CP3, right? For the R9. They're both basically, they're 90% of a liter bike. But they are not 90% of the power. That is for sure. Tad's checking in, saying, I'm a 40-year-old inexperienced rider looking at buying a Buell Blast for my first bike. Yay or nay? Runs, drive, seller says needs nothing. The only problem with a Buell Blast is, look, how well has it been maintained? It's a great bike. It's a great starter bike. In fact, it's a lot of fun to ride. And for you guys that don't know what he's talking about, the Buell Blast back in the day was a bike, hang on, that really didn't get a whole lot of love. It depends on which one you're getting, if it's a 500 or not. But they can be, hang on, let me pull this thing up. From back in the day, where's some images of this thing? As long as you're getting it, on a really good deal, I wouldn't probably spend a ton of money on it, because it really is, it's a very introductory bike. I would say that if you like the styling of this thing, which is why you would get it, you would probably be okay. Although I think that there's some better bikes out there, because this is going to be an older bike, and again, getting parts for it is going to be tough. You're going to want to do a full service on this bike. Want to take a look at the tires, brakes, brake pads, brake lines, and everything else that comes with it. So as long as you're up for that, you will be in good shape. But they're not very powerful, and they will scoot you around, and they sound pretty cool too. So there you go with that. Oh, Tad saying he's going to be taking a rider class. Very good. I highly suggest that you do. And then don't forget to get out and play, enjoy the bike. Practice looking through your corners. That's a huge thing. Don't forget. Tad saying for $1,200. Yeah, for $1,200. Look, for $1,200, it's not that much of an investment. And, I would always say, make sure you get it serviced. Service records are a big deal. Brakes, brake pads, anything with a fluid, just make sure you swap it out. I was saying, you really got to test a 990 RCR to tell us how it is. I was not thinking about roll racing, maybe power wheelies. That will definitely do that. I would love to. I'm looking forward to getting my hands on one at some point. It's very difficult to get a leg over one of those, as you may imagine. And the guys that have them, talking about the dealerships, don't want anything to happen to them, because obviously, so that means that demos are kind of tough. But as soon as I can, I will absolutely be bringing that to you. I was saying, just looked up the blasters, super cheap on Marketplace. They are. So saying, man, I've got the MT-09 in my stable also, and even though it's a 900, it's still not on par with the leader bike. Well, no, it'll never be. That engine was never designed to be a high performance engine. Matter of fact, it does exactly what it was meant to do. It just make really good mid-range power. It's funny, motorcycle, it's just engines in general. It's very easy to get caught up in the idea of displacement and horsepower and how those things come together. Motorcycles are strange animals, because displacement in motorcycles rarely, if ever, has anything to do with how much power the engine makes. It will tell you how much torque it makes. One of the most universal constants is it's very easy to kind of Kentucky windage your way through how much torque a bike will make based on displacement. But when it comes to horsepower, that's a completely different conversation. And so guys will go, well, the MT-09 or the R9, it's 900 cc's, but it doesn't make, 180 horsepower. It's like, it's not supposed to. It's supposed to make grunt. It's supposed to be torquey. It's supposed to be smooth. And so the guys that try to make those bikes more and more and more powerful find out really quickly that it becomes kind of a dragon that you'll never catch. And this is one of the reasons why with my R9, I was looking at the R9 and I was going, man, I love riding that thing. I really did. I really love riding the R9 a lot. But the more I looked at it, and the fact that my dealership happened to get an R1, I was thinking, if I do anything else to the R9 outside of just the pipe, the tune, and the tire, and the DNA air filter thing, which I'm really on the fence about the value of that. Anything outside of that, the problem is now I'm into R1 money. And that's a problem. So this is the issue with the super middleweights. We talked about this with the RCR 990, and how it compares to, say, a GSXR 1000. But even look into the Suzuki camp itself. A GSXR 750 costs roughly $13,500. For $2,500 or so more, $3,000 really, you can get a GSXR 1000. And it really makes you question, should you even consider a GSXR 750? Now you should, and we all know how good of a bike that it is, but still, that GSXR 1000 really does narrow the gap, and it expresses itself very well in terms of value per dollar. Bruce saying, I was waiting for your take on the pricing. Late as hell to the live and can't wait to watch beginning tomorrow, Monday. Bruce checking in. I like it. By the way, shout out to my crew members that are in. Hold up. Got to catch a roll call real quick. We got Plyo was the first in. DM chasing him down real quick for a tight second. Let's see. Are you guys the only crew members in? Looks like y'all are. So we got DM and Plyo is in. Are in. Bruce now is in. Very nice. Bruce checking in with R-Mac. So saying, yeah, the MT-09 has definitely got some grunt, though. Yeah, and with a tune, with just a de-restriction, the MT-09, anything CP3 is really, really, really good. So I love them for what they are, and I love them for what they represent. But they're certainly not a performance engine. And then, and this is the point that I was getting to. So what would it have taken for the R9 to really wake up? Well, the problem is it's not just camshafts. It's a cylinder head swap too. You've got to swap the head on that thing to really allow it to breathe. And even then, and even with aftermarket camshafts, those Crowler cams, the V2, I guess is what you would call them, the best that you're going to hope for is a very game about 140 horsepower at the rear tire, which is a lot of power. In fact, that's really where that bike needs to be. And I'll go on record as saying this. I mean, not that I would want to give up my R1 to get this bike, and not even that it would do well on the channel, but a revised R9 with significantly better flowing cylinder heads, which it would absolutely have to have, and a better set of camshafts that would at least allow you some level of performance. Let's say the thing puts down 125 to the rear tire from the factory, allows you to get it up to, say, 135, 136, 137, maybe, with a pipe and tune. That's where that R9 truthfully needs to be. Sacrificial is asking, do I have any experience with the 520 on GSXR 750 in general? A little bit, but it's been a long time. Is it worth going 520 for the streets if I'm changing out sprockets anyway? Yeah, sure. Go with the 520, but I would suggest going with the super light sprockets and get the steel sprockets. Don't get the aluminum. Those things wear out pretty quickly. Get a good DID chain since you're going to be swapping everything out anyway. I've had bikes, the 636 came from the factory with a 520, and I've ridden GSXR 750 and 600 with 520 chains. That's been a long time ago. You may not really notice a difference. It'll be a little bit livelier, maybe, but it's a good idea to do because you're going to be there anyway. You're going to be spending the money. Go ahead and upgrade it. There's no strength. Well, comparatively speaking, for your bike, there's no strength difference between 520 and 525. So go with the lighter weight combination, and you'll be happy that you did. And while you're there, just go down a tooth up front. Put the 16 tooth front sprocket. Stick with a 45 tooth out back, and that bike is going to be a very happy camper. Some random saying, I just got my motorcycle permit. It's hard to pass the MSF. It can be. It can be. Once you get past the point of thinking about what you're doing, then that's where it gets real easy. But if you're like worried about where you are in space and all of that, that's early on motorcycling, and that can be very frustrating. So we're saying after I finish, I have to go back to the DMV. Yeah, you do. DM, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Saying 20 for gas and 4 for Ryan's membership. Yeah, Armac, where you at? how did you not, how did you not crew up, man? Um, Thank you very much, DM. I do appreciate it. I truly do appreciate your continued support, man. You've been a big help for the channel for sure. Um, yeah, I speaking of 20 for gas, so I'm going to be on the R1, assuming that it doesn't rain. She's finally going out for her first trip out to the spot to go have a little bit of fun with her. And so we'll definitely be putting that in the tank. Um, I'll put it to you like this. It's the R1 for me is kind of an interesting bike. You know, we're talking about the GSXR 1000, but the R1 is interesting to me because of how much time I spent with the GSXR 1000s. Um, you know, it's strange. Had I not been so close-minded at initially against the R1, only because of an ergonomic quirk that I thought that I found with that bike that ended up not really being a real thing, I probably would have had one a couple of years ago. But I'm glad that I waited, and because that I waited, I ended up really being able to dive into the Suzuki middleweights again. And just as things kind of turned out, it ended up being a situation where I was able to have that kind of rekindling that I had with the Gixxer middleweights. That turned into a bit of a fling with the R9, which I really liked. But since now that I've got the R1, I'm really understanding why so many guys say, man, if you've got a Gixxer 750, your leader bike is the R1. If you've got, you know, a 636, then your leader bike is the Gixxer 1000. And it's kind of funny how it really does seem to play out that way. However, I will say this, as you guys will hear me say about the R1, that bike feels, now that I've got one and I've been able to spend some time with it, it feels like that bike was tailor-made for me. It just, the ergonomics, the way the bike feels, the steering and all of that feels so good. It feels so natural. The Gixxer 1000 is still really good too. And I will say this, the base model bike, to me anyway, felt better than the R model, but that's because of a quirk with the shock on the R model. But I'm looking forward to going back to back with the new Gixxer 1000 and the R1, because I have a feeling that it's going to be just like going from 636 to Gixxer 750. Oh, Paul saying, I'm in PA. I was struggling with sneaking around S-turn still until I got my M endorsement through it. Some random saying, I never rode a motorcycle and I don't have anyone to practice with because I'm doing this off the radar because my parents don't want me riding. I understand that. Actually, I don't know. My dad, my dad had me riding motorcycles. Myself and my cousin and our family had us riding when we were 5. So yeah, I've been around these things for a hot minute with some breaks here and there, but Bruce saying DM out here calling out Armac. I love it. Bob saying, where are you going to keep the bike? Just be careful, man. Be careful, practice. It's a lifelong acquired skill set. Volt saying, I just got a 26 636. I'm really thinking about grabbing a ZX10 already. I tell you what, ZX10 is a good bike, especially if you're coming off of a 636. I haven't had a chance to ride a ZX10. I'm at least not the latest version. I've ridden older ones. And even then, my experience was a bit limited with that bike. I would love to throw a leg over the current ZX10, though. And Vol said, I hope you review one soon. I'm trying to find one to get a leg over, and I'm hoping, we'll see, maybe something by the end of the season, hopefully. Anyway, the idea is that the ZX10, the way that bike builds power is really good for guys that are new to leader bikes, in that it kind of builds up to a really big horsepower number. But through the mid-range, there's not a lot. It's strong. It's a leader bike. It's going to do leader bike stuff. But of all the leader bikes, it's the lowest in terms of torque down low and mid-range torque. Like just power through the mid-range going up to the right-hand side of the tack. That's not a bad thing. You know, this is a situation where if you look at a dyno chart and you start to try to pick this thing apart, you know, and I always bring this one up. Yeah, you look at a dyno chart, you try to pick this apart. This is, the bottom line is a stock R1. The second line is a piped and tuned R1, and then the top line is a GSXR 1000. There are miles and away different, right? But they're still leader bikes. I think the ZX10, if you're going to be going from a 636, a ZX10 is great because it's not going to be this huge hit of torque the way that the GSXR is. And the R1 is like this too, but to a little bit different extent. The R1 does make better bottom and mid-range power than the ZX10, but the ZX10 is the horsepower king. But leading up to that, it's just a really easy bike, at least on paper, to ride. Oh, some random side, I just don't want to fail the MSF. No, just keep getting out there and practicing, man. You'll do good. And just trial and error. That's all that matters, man. Just get out there, again, practice. Find you a friendly parking lot and just practice. Michael's saying, test rode a ZX14, scared the piss out of me. Loved it, and I'm sorely tempted to pull the trigger. Also, thank you, Squid. I tell you what, ZX14 is a great bike. They are very grunty, very torquey bikes, very much like the Hayabusa. I didn't see nothing. Got Michael hanging out with Bruce. My shit has been goofy. Fellows hanging out with some random. So yeah, it's $500 per course. Indeed. I got the money. I don't want to waste it. Yeah. Take it seriously. Practice up. And again, it's all about practice time. You'll hear anybody tell you the best teacher is seat time. Head on a swivel, make sure you're looking where you want to go. You know, be mindful that you are not target fixating. Always look where you want that bike to go. Check your horizon at all time, basically, and you'll be in good shape. Some say I have no bike to practice on. You don't necessarily have to have a bike to practice. A lot of what guys will do is just straight up visualization. Now, it's hard to do without a bike, but remembering, it's just being mindful. And you can practice riding a motorcycle while you're driving your car. You know, it's kind of weird to do, weird to think about. But the idea is you practice the fundamentals of looking where you want to be. Don't just look right in front of you. Scan your horizon. Don't find yourself looking at something like distractions in the road. Be looking around. Be more mindful of the cars that are around you. Remember that when you're on a motorcycle, what's the first thing they tell you at MSF? 3, 2, 1. Ride like you're invisible, right? Because you are. Cars can't see you. So drive your car the same way that you would ride your motorcycle. Be mindful of your surroundings and have spatial awareness. Oh, Volt saying you do the best reviews. Glad I found your channel. Thank you. Got the flex. I appreciate that very much. I try to bring you guys reviews on things from your point of view, like from, not trying to come at it from like, how do you put it? Like a journalist, like the kind of snooty, sniff your own fart kind of way that some of these guys will put out there. And I get that can be really off-putting. One of the things that I don't do, and maybe I could do more of, but I find it to be a bit tedious, is a deeper dive into some of the technology with these bikes. But I think that because we don't, the technology, here's the problem with technology. it after a very short amount of time, it just blends into whatever the machine is, and you bought it to ride. So that's why I focus the most on the ride. And when I'm talking you guys through our favorite little S turn and all of that, I'm trying to show you that you don't have to be scared of the bike. Just get out there and enjoy it, have fun, and the more you practice and the more fun that you try to have, the more fun you will have. And it's just building confidence. That's the main thing. But I appreciate the kind words, man. I appreciate that a lot. Yeah, Paul is saying, yeah, pilots practice flying without flying all the time. They call it chair flying. You can do something like that. Yeah, that's, you'll see a lot of times, you'll see guys, you just visualization. Visualization, the more experience you have, the better visualization works. Chair flying, super common thing for pilots. Anything that race car drivers do the same thing. You get familiar with the track, and then you start riding the track. You're dropping her in, how your shoulder placement is, all of that. I can do that right now, coming into turn one at T Hill, dropping it off, wait forever for turn one to go away, drop it into 2, 3, come into 4, go up over the risers, 5, 6 as it drops down in elevation. I mean, you literally can do that as you're just sitting there doing nothing. And visualization, by the way, is one of the most important tools that you can use with the experience that you start to collect. Use that in visualization. And it can be meditative, by the way, but use it in that way where you're mindful of how that brake feels. Feel the brake. This is so weird, but it works. I'm telling you. And you see guys in paddocks doing it all the time. And it looks like they're doing some kind of interpretive dance sometimes. They're literally putting their mind in their body, and they're feeling it. You literally will start to sense it in your fingers, and you start to feel everything that's going around that you're expecting to happen. So anyway, it's real important that you do that. So yes, do that. Some random say I do that already very well, so that's no issue. The basic rider systems I see very different, very different. Michael's saying, step 1, watch everyone else. Step 2, don't pay attention to what you're doing. Step 3, always rider step 1, rinse and repeat. Yep. Yeah, keep looking. Always be mindful of what's around you. Situational awareness is a big deal. Like using your feet for gears and all. Yep. Like riding in Cyberpunk. Yep. Some random say, I do have a pedal bike. Maybe that would be good practice. Most riders have a bike. One of the things about a pedal bike, bicycle, yes, it does help quite a bit, especially with making sure that you don't target fixate. Sorry for saying motorcycle soup. What's up? I don't know why it's translating motorcycle soup. What's up, Swabby? I was saying it's so much fun to practice and learn for the first time. Once you get a bike, you will not want to do anything else for weeks, which is very true. Volt's saying, I'm very interested in the quick shifter upgrade you did on the GSXR. It's mandatory, man. It really is. FTECU is the name of that manufacturer. I'm thinking about adding that very soon. Great insight in that video. Thank you. So one thing I will suggest, when you watch the video, I think I used the stock shift rod on that when I did that install. That was a pretty tight install. That can get a little bit fiddly during the install. What you might want to do, if you think about doing it, just get a universal kit that has some of the shift shafts. That it could end up being helpful. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I did use the stock shift shaft, although it was really tight to get everything to get started. It ended up working pretty well. So, but no. It's mandatory. I don't know what, and get the, what is it? Torx Moto, whatever it is. get the shaft stabilizer also. That helped that bike out a ton. It didn't solve all of the problems, but it made a lot of them go away, right? And what was going to end up happening with me in the 636 was I was just going to end up not even having the quick shifter in play anymore. If Smokey wouldn't have come up for grabs, I wouldn't have let the 636 go, at least not at that point. And I would have just turned off the quick shifter, because with that setup, the gearbox in the Kawasaki is super slick, especially with the shaft stabilizer. It's really nice. So, I was getting to the point where I was like, man, this quick shifter is driving me nuts. And so I made that switch, and it really helped it out quite a bit. So yes, 100 jillion% suggest doing that. And don't be surprised if you've got to go back to the video that I did when I'm doing the install and just like stop and just kind of look at how everything is put together, because I ended up putting it together a little bit differently too than how I think it was meant to go together on that bike with that kit, and it ended up working out better with the stock components. Go figure. But getting back to the GSXR 1000, look, let me pull this thing back up for us, guys, because I want to make sure we've got a visual. There we go. Getting back to the GSXR 1000, guys, look, here's the thing. It's an awesome price for the bike. $16,400 for what you're getting. It's an amazing machine, and it's basically super middleweight priced. In fact, let's do this before I get a little bit ahead of myself. I want to look at Ducati V2 Panigale. Here's the big question. If this thing will pull this bike up. Oh, cookie settings. Come on, get out here. Let's pull up that V2 Panigale real quick. Where'd it go? Oh, here we go. The thing about this bike is that it is, of the super middleweights, probably the best, right? Do you have to admit that? I guess you have to, right? Keep in mind, GSXR 1000, 16,000, call it 16,500. It's really 16,400, but let's call it $16,000 just for the sake of argument. Here's what we've got to take into account. This is the problem that you're going to end up being faced with. Oh, I'm blocking this. Anyway, the price, I got to fix this, guys. The price on this thing, well, it's $17,000, $16,995. I don't think I can move me out of the way. I can't. So anyway, I'm literally covering the price. That's crazy. $17,000 for the Ducati. And you might go, well, hey, it's a Ducati. Yeah, it is. But it's a $500 more than a GSXR 1000 Ducati that's making, to the rear tire as stock, 40 less horsepower. The V2 Panigale does well enough to run with the Yamaha R9 on track, stock for stock we're talking about. I'm not talking about modified with this, that, or whatever done to it. Taking them both out, they're de-restricted because the American version of the R9 is woefully under-throttled in first and second gear. The point of it is that that's a middleweight. What? Whereas you could have the GSXR 1000. And I suppose, you know how it is. People are going to say, yeah, it's a Suzuki, it's a Ducati. If you know, you know. Look, here's all I know. I know I can get a premier leader bike that is gonna be incredibly durable. That's gonna be one of the best bikes you can possibly spend money on, or you can get the Ducati. I don't know. I think the right money is going to be on the Zook. And by the way, let's not forget that for your $16,500 GSXR 1000, you realize how well these things retain their value. Ducati's not so much. But it's really more to show you that this is the outlier. And really this was more to the point that I wanted to get to. Middleweights now, and I'm talking about the R9 in a way, doesn't really count here, but the RCR 990, the V2 Panigale, and whatever else is going to come that's not called ZX Moto. Those bikes, the entry level price for these bikes, once it's all said and done, let's just go ahead and call them $16,000 motorcycles. That is the new price of a middleweight. Here's where I'm going with this. If there were to be a next GSXR 750, something with all the fixings, all the technology, all the power, new powertrain, everything else, quick shifter, you name it, that bike would be about $15,500 or $16,000. We've already established that the GSXR 750 back in 2012, if you take inflation and run it back, that's a $15,500 bike, right? So when you look at where the bike really should cost, it's at about that $16,000 range if you were to have a new one. Another good example of this is the Triumph 765 RX. That bike is about a $14,500 bike, but if you could imagine that with a fairing, that's going to be about a $15,500, $16,000 bike. That's where this class is going. So does it mean that the Suzuki GSXR 1000 is the better deal? Well, yes and no. The thing is that GSXR 1000 does not have the TFT screen. Does that matter? Not really, but it doesn't have it. You got to mention it. These are going to turn into nitpicks. Is it going to be the real, just is it going to be the GSXR 1000 that you remember from back in the day, which was 2025? We don't know. We don't know what this technology pack is going to act like. How is the bike going to get down the road? I don't know. That's the thing. But we're soon to find out. But it's still a leader bike, and it's going to give leader bike levels of performance. That's not always exactly what folks are looking for, though. And if you're in the market for a super middleweight, you're probably not going to be thinking about a 1000cc super bike. Let's face it, they're less comfortable to ride. They're significantly more expensive to insure, which is the other side of this whole equation here that we haven't even talked about yet. And you might not want to have a bike that needs to be legged out to really enjoy on the street. But the Suzuki is a lot of fun. And again, we're still kind of talking about this bike stock, maybe with the slip-on and de-restricted. They are a lot of fun, but I just don't think that, yes, it's less expensive, and yes, it makes a lot more power, but that's a very only surface scratching way to look at the value that those super middleweights bring to the table. Hopefully I'm making sense. Volt's asking, I was curious if the two-wheel DynoWorks tune will make the quick shifter smoother. Oh, sorry. Volt saying, I just missed this. I'm very interested in the quick shifter. Oh, wait, I saw that. Wait a minute. Oh, okay. Sorry, I just completely lost my place here. I was curious to see if the two-wheel DynoWorks tune will make the quick shifter smoother. It sort of did, but it didn't take away the mechanical issue that the Kawasaki has, which is the gear position sensor. it just kind of loses track of where it's at. It's like it forgot or something. So the programming is good, but the execution isn't because of the hardware on the bike itself. Um, Michael saying pulling up on a Heritage Softail to ride the 125s at the MSF course is fun and obnoxious too. To be honest with you guys, I don't think they'll let me onto the well. I can play on the MSF course, but they won't let me play with the guys out there. I thought about doing that and just kind of coming in and anyway. Paul is saying one thing Suzuki needs more than anything else is a solid beginner bike, maybe even more than updating its middleweights and Game Boy Dash on the 1000. You know, they've got some pretty decent, I say entry-level bike. The SV650 is still there, and the GSXS and R are still there. Now, I wouldn't call those entry-level bikes, but I see where you're going with that. I would like to see him have like a parallel twin 400. I think that would be pretty cool. Or do something with the DRZ platform in a more streetable guise, if you will. I think that would be a good place to go. That Urban Athlete GSX 250R is not that at all. Paul is saying, yeah, but V2 is like a super version middleweight class power. I don't think people cross shop. That's that they're looking at leader bikes. Yeah, the thing is that you're right. And that's what I was kind of saying, I think, earlier. I don't know that those guys are looking at leader bikes. So, yeah, it's plus you're looking for a completely different riding experience when you go super middleweight versus something like a leader bike, GSXR 1000 or R1 or ZX10, whatever it might be. DM saying, the Ducati is close to wow with beauty, rideable art. The Duck doesn't move me, but the Suzuki does. I'm the same way. Shouldn't I be different about the Duck? I mean, I almost feel like it's some kind of a level of heresy to just not want the Duck right away, right? Because it used to be like that. The Ducati was a thing that you were supposed to just lust after. But I don't. I look at the Ducati. Look, I'll put it to you like this. I think this is, DM, you might agree with this, or at least you'll understand where I'm coming from with this. The V2 Panigale is a thing to look at, kind of, but it doesn't do anything for me. I look at the V2 Panigale as kind of a, it's too watered down. It's not Ducati enough. You know, it's like if you're making Kool-Aid and you don't put enough Kool-Aid in the Kool-Aid and it just kind of tastes like red water. That to me is what the Ducati is. It's not enough Ducati in my Ducati. I need more Ducati. I got a fever and the only prescription is more Ducati. For the V2, for me, is not Ducati enough in that it's not raucous enough. It's not, it doesn't have that, that uniquely differentness about it. For that bike to have those traits, it would have to lose the things that make it a better bike. Because with no Desmo and without the displacement and without a set of cylinder heads and without basically 150 horsepower, without that thing being a Testastretta, basically, it just lacks a certain amount of soul. And the argument to that is, yeah, but the 890 is more torquey and it's what is it? It's a lighter bike, right? And it feels, and it's not what I came here for. Now, I want Ducati with my Ducati, right? And that's where, like, here's the thing. One of the bikes I've been really wanting to throw a leg over, and I never have had a chance, is the 959. That's for me the bike that, you know, the outgoing Testastrada V2 Panigale. That's the bike that I look at that and I go, that's the successor to the GSXR 750 in the stable. Now there is a successor coming to the GSXR 750 in the stable, and but it's going to be a ways out. It would be a Ducati if I could find one, but those things are obnoxiously expensive anyway. But The thing is that when I look at the V2, I just can't get excited. It doesn't move me. The Suzuki has got a thing about it that is just kind of universally accepted. It's a comfortable bike to ride in terms of rider position, and with the right suspension setups, which are right here on this wall, you can get good front end feel out of it, and it'll be a good bike overall, just in general, without resorting to technology and everything else, which it does have, which everybody's kind of scared of, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Okay, getting back to it. Oh, DM saying without the Desmo, yeah, exactly. Without the Desmo valve system, the duck doesn't sound duck anymore, and that's the thing. I don't want. The Ducati has to have a story behind it. Part of that story is that, the Desmo valve thing. Without that, it just doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't do something for me. Even though I know that the spring actuated valves are better technically, that's not what I'm here for. I'm here for Ducati stuff. Ducati sells the sizzle, but the fat. Yeah, I agree. Volt saying, in my opinion, Aprilia has some of the best looking bikes out now, RS660 and RSV4, just not convinced of their reliability. Yeah, the 660 is actually pretty good. The RSV4, I also believe, is pretty stout. Love Aprilia, though. One of the things about Aprilia that I loved is how they put down power. I rode the Tuono, the Tuono V4. And that bike was crazy how that bike put down torque. It was one of the more fun bikes that I've ever ridden. It put down a healthy amount more torque than the 1200S Monster did. And one of the takeaways that I had, I was like, holy cow, man, this thing's like riding a street glide with the amount of torque it had just on an initial tip in. It was crazy. And but it had horsepower to go along with it. The Aprilias, their reliability is pretty good these days. I wouldn't worry so much about that. And they are very fun to ride. Paulo's saying, I don't know, Ducati is lacking something for me. Even their V4 doesn't get me going. I get it. The funny thing about Ducati, okay, so let's talk about that for a minute. We're talking about horsepower and per dollars and all of that. Where the GSXR 1000 plays nice with the rest of the field is that as stock, again, I don't want to get into the piped and tuned side of this because to me, that almost kind of screws up the GSXR 1000. I love them de-restricted with a catalytic converter still on them with a slip on. To me, that is the part of where the GSXR 1000 lies. If you're not doing track days, you're just out blasting, that is one of the best setups. Now, the R1 falls into that same category for me, except I got the cat off and I'm rocking the Graves titanium, which is starting to turn colors and it looks beautiful. But anyway, I digress. The more power you make, the harder it is to control the motorcycle, right? And what am I getting at with that? Okay, well, the V2, or V4 rather, I should say, one of the reasons why I can't really just get all lathered up over the Ducati V4 is that it literally requires the employment of so many nannies to keep the front end of that bike on the ground and not coming up all the time. You're gonna, just like the R1 and just like every modern motorcycle that's ride by wire, when you're rolling into the throttle, you don't want a throttle that is linear with some of these bikes because it can make it jerky. It can make it very difficult to ride. That's what happened with that two-wheel Dyno Works tune on my GSXR 1000. It just made it overly responsive. And that was annoying because when you're on the side of the tire and you're not on slicks and you're not running a race pace, that extra hit would make the bike, it would actually upset the chassis on the street. The first time I noticed that was at Carousel, and I was going, man, this sucks. Should have left it stock. Should have left it just the way I had it, but should have left it the way I found it, I should say. But anyway, getting back to it, the thing about these bikes is that the more power you have, the not better it is. And this is how I equate to it. You've got to have all these nannies to keep the front end of that bike on the ground. And so you don't really get a chance to experience all this power that you bought that you see on a dyno chart until like fifth gear, sixth gear. It's going to be throttled back a significant amount, even in fourth gear, even though you'll still get to 100%. And for the guys that'll go, oh, but it's making so much more power. I'm like, yeah, that's actually something that you have to deal with. You have to manage that power. And that's where the nannies come in, because they help in management of that. On the side of the tire, you know, this is where that lean sensitive throttle mapping comes into play that you basically have to have when you've got these things making as much power as they do, considering the tire technology can only manage so much. Tires are only so sticky. There's only so much of a coefficient of friction. There's only so much you can do with the suspension of these bikes to keep them still rideable on the street while still being able to manage the kind of loads that these bikes can put down. And in my latest video that I put out, you guys may not have seen it yet, but I put one out talking about the suspension settings on the R1. And now that I've got enough miles on it and I'm really pushing the pace. In fact, one thing I didn't talk about in that video was how hard I was pushing the pace on that bike to try to upset it. Real hard on the brakes coming into our favorite S turn, making the drop, real hard on the throttle, holding the throttle open a lot longer, and then grabbing a lot of gear, grabbing a downshift and slamming that thing over to our favorite stop signs, trying to get the bike to step out a little bit, trying to upset the chassis. And that R1 is so good. Oh my God. Anyway, but I can't do that with that bike if I don't have some level of, well, I can with that bike, even with traction control off. But if it had more power, it would just make it more unrideable. I wouldn't be able to have the kind of fun. So, you know, the price per performance thing, you know, we're talking about middleweights versus, you know, the leader bike here at the same price. The middleweight offers up more performance at a lower speed, though, than the Gixxer will. You don't get a chance to experience all that what makes this bike good when you're going at a middleweight pace. You just don't. And so for a lot of guys, you look at the spec sheet and go, man, that's awesome. And it's cool for what you can get, 192, 194 horsepower, whatever this thing is supposed to be de-restricted. By the way, in restricted form in the States, it's going to make as much, probably it'll actually make more power de-restricted because it's going to be quieter with that freaking bazooka can that it's got on there. But anyway, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, the middleweights versus this. We're now getting into that era where if you start to make the argument that performance per dollar is what is the only thing that you can put in terms of an argument out there in terms of the value of a bike, then you're looking at bikes in general in the wrong way. Okay. DM saying Aprilia all the way. Love Aprilias. You know, one of the bikes that I really want to ride is the 660. I was saying maybe they need their bikes to go back to monster to be tamed vibes like they used to be. I tell you what they should probably do, if you're going to be doing away with the Desmo setup, fine, but just make engines that aren't crossover style engines. You know, what I mean by that is the same engine that's in the V2 Panigale is the same engine that's in the Testa Strada. And it'll be used for other applications that aren't called V2 Panigale. I need an engine that is unique to the V2 Panigale. The Panigale is a sport bike. I need a sport bike engine in a sport bike. The way that I need the CP3 to get hot rodded into sport bike fashion in the R9, or in the way that KTM is using the Duke 990R model engine in their sport bike. At least that bike comes from kind of a hooligan-y kind of a bike, and although it's not, you know, revving to the moon, I think you get the idea. for the Ducati, for it to really make any sense to me, it needs to be only race bike Ducati stuff, and that's the main thing. Ames is asking, what are your thoughts on the GSX 1000? I want to get a naked, but not sure what to choose. Love that bike. You know, I had a Katana, it was a 2020, and it's the big cam version it's part of the GSX family. So you have GSXS, GSX, GX, the Katana, which isn't really, I don't even know if they offer that in the States anymore, with the Sato handlebar setup, which I do highly recommend. Um, love the bike, love it to death. Matter of fact, there's still two of them at the dealership right now, and I've thought about taking one of them home if I was in the market for a naked bike, which I was there for a hot minute. We've got the 1200S is still in inventory. Oh, the shout out to whoever bought the Triumph, the Speed Triple 1050. Awesome bike. And it's the last bike that I did a ride review on. Unfortunately, my mic, I screwed up my mic on the camera rig. And so I had gone back to try to do a ride review on it, and it had sold. So anyway, the whole reason why I was doing a revisit on that bike was to get it to sell. It looks like I didn't have to do that. But yeah, I just, of the naked bikes that I've ridden, GSXS 1000 is easily at the top of the list. It's got the old K5 GSXR 1000 engine in it with a slightly revised cam. It's easy to get a good number out of those bikes. Typically with a pipe and a tune, they're somewhere around, say, 150-ish horsepower at the rear tire, which translates to one hell of a fun bike to ride. They'll put down around 79 or 80 pound-feet of torque. And dude, I got to tell you, of the naked bikes, they're some of the most fun. Check out my ride review. I did a ride review on one of those bikes. It's a red and white GSXS 1000. I damn near brought that bike home with me. Pilot's saying, the reason why I've not bought a Katana is because of the small fuel tank. Real talk on that, dude. That sucks. Here's the other thing. That's one of the R9's big kind of problems for me, is that it does have a small fuel tank. Chef saying Ducatis are made of cheap plastic parts for needed services. Tell you what, that is a big bike too. The Ducati to me is an oddly large bike. Hold on, let me pull this thing back up. It really is. In fact, I think, I might be wrong, but I think the Ducati weighs as much as the CBR 1000, which is the lightest of the 1000cc bikes. I believe that's the case. Let me see if we can get specs on this thing. All of these bikes, by the way, the middleweights all weigh. It doesn't matter which one you're looking at. Without getting too in the weeds, just totally diving in and being specific, they're all 432, 435 pounds. All of them are now, which means that these bikes don't really weigh that much less than a liter bike anyway. But they've got longer wheelbases. R9 is the exact same as a GSXR 750, GSXR 1000. The Ducati, I want to say, is one of the largest. Anyway, I digress. Let me catch back up with you guys. Chef saying maintenance. Oh, I guess talking about the Ducati. Actually, maintenance on Ducks now is not bad. It used to be bad with the Desmo bikes, but you just wrote that off as part of the Ducatista experience. Oh, Aim said, "Oh, you did? I'll check it out." Very awesome. Yeah, check out that video, man. It's somewhere in the playlist. I think it's under Suzuki Motorcycles. probably certainly under the ride review section. But yeah, check that out. If you want, a firsthand experience of that bike, it's a lot of fun, man. I mean, the thing about the GSX-S 1000 is, again, it's the K5 engine. So it's the small bore 1000 that makes a ton of mid-range power already. With the cams that it's got that bring the peak power down a little bit, it really does run like a triple. Like you would, if you were to just not be able to hear the thing and ride it, it rides very similarly to, okay, that speed triple that I rode, the 1098 or 10, whatever it is, 1050, speed triple 1050. It makes torque like the speed triple 1050, but it makes horsepower to the tune of like 15 or 20 more horsepower than that bike. And here's the other thing. It's got a hell of a slick shifting quick shifter on that bike. So a lot of good things to be said about that thing. And it's one of the most overlooked bikes, and I don't get it. But then again, it does kind of, the naked bike thing, it kind of ebbs and flows. It comes into fashion, goes out of fashion, comes into fashion, goes out of fashion. But it's one of the most slept on bikes at the dealership. And I love that thing. It's a blast. I was saying, why are all bikes shrinking tails of sport bikes? Oh, talking about how they're bobbed in the back. That's just kind of a thing. I think they've figured out that most guys aren't taking passengers on these bikes, not very often anyway. Maybe that's why. I don't really know, man. That's just the latest trend. That is the fashion that we're working with. Let me see something here. Get back to the Zook. The Gixxer. Gixxer's actually not really bobbed. It's a bit more of a traditional look. Let's get back to this thing. I will say this. I do like 2027 colorways. Big fan of the colorways on this bike. Love the yellow. I am just smitten with the yellow. The 40th anniversary colorway, I like it. I like it a lot. I don't know, man. I just really like the yellow. The yellow pops to me. The red and white looks good too, but you can only get them in the States in an R model. And I'm sorry, but I'm just not an R model fan anymore. It's the way that bike is sprung and the way that it's set up is for somebody smaller and for somebody that's going to be doing track days. And although on the street it is more compliant, it's not as stable under high load. So that's the reason why, for me, I go standard model every single time with the Gixxer. And I know the bike. Plus, I've got a suspension setup that I know is going to work well. So, I mean, it's on my whiteboard right here. So that's why I personally would go with the standard model, were I to get a Gixxer 1000. But the idea is that, in kind of closing this up here, for $16,500, you're going to get a bike that is, it's got the reputation. It's got the durability. It's got the performance. It's, by many's estimation, it's the most comfortable to ride. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. That's a whole ergonomics thing. But there's so much data on this bike in terms of suspension setup and durability. They're baking durability into this bike for homologation into like the 24-hour races, those endurance races. That's really what this bike is being put out into the world for. So for me, yeah, for a middleweight price, you can get a leader bike, and that's saying quite a bit already. Polo's asking, did they add a TFT? Negative. No TFT on this thing. Cruel saying, I was thinking about getting the 40th gen or 40th GSXR. The more I think about it, the ZX10 looks better. You know, the anniversary bike, to me, with this colorway, with it being a little bit more analog, it kind of works, but I'm right there with you. It needs a TFT. I feel like it kind of does. And Paul saying, can't complain about anything about a leader bike at $16,500 for sure. Electric 700cc show. I don't know which bike that is. I was saying it's 2027 and no TFT. Shake my, listen, I'm right there with you. To me, listen, I know that the TFT screen doesn't cost anymore. In fact, the GSX-S 1000 that we were just talking about, it's got a TFT now. It had the LCD screen, which was basically right off of the GSX-R 1000. And you know what's funny? I mean, the price went down. It got a TFT. Nobody noticed. And I'm going, guys, look, how do you not have a TFT on this bike? What I think is going to maybe end up happening is that later versions of this latest GSXR 1000 is going to get a TFT screen, and it might just be a plug and play thing. You just have to buy it as an accessory and put it on this bike. But they had better raise the price on this thing. It's all I can say. Oh my goodness. Crew saying, agreed. Hopefully the dealers don't jack it up too much. Yeah, listen, I mean, this bike is you're not going to be finding any deals on the latest GSXRs. They're too good of a bike. There's too many changes that have been made. And quite honestly, you know, it really does set itself apart from the rest of the field. Apollo's saying, how much do you guys think it would change things if they added a TFT and some stuff, but price at $1,000 more? That's what we all expected. Listen, none of us expected 16.4 for this bike, for the base model. Everybody that was talking about this before it was released, we're all saying 17.5. It's a 17.5, and it was going to go 17.5 for the base and 19 for the R model. That's the number that I landed on. And boy, was I wrong. I was off by, you know, about $1,000. And my thing is, just for the money, just put the dadgum thing on the bike. But I mean, at that number, the bike would sell. And if it had a TFT, people wouldn't have a reason to complain about it. DM saying, there's an idea for Yamaha and Suzuki, make an option for us to buy the TFT screen at the party counter as a plug and play. Then it's on us. Absolutely. You know, the thing is that there's no, look, the aftermarket already has an awesome looking TFT for this bike. And it's the AIM screen. It's plug and play. You can customize it. We got a welcome screen. It's got all kinds of cool stuff, right? And it's a plug and play thing. You just boop, take this one off, boop, put the other one on. You program it with your laptop. You link to it with an app on your phone. Dude, it's all there. And I think that thing even has some level of connectivity where I think you can run. Anyway, it's got a lot of stuff. I don't want to talk out of turn. I don't really know what I'm talking about in general with that thing, only the superficial fact that you can buy one for this bike. So yeah, I don't know, guys. It's kind of interesting that you can't get that with this bike, but it is what it is. And you know, look, there's an aftermarket solution, but isn't that just Suzuki for you? You know, like, isn't it so Suzuki to give you the bike for very inexpensive and then just let the aftermarket have its way with you? I don't know. Yeah. So DM saying exactly. AIM Systems is awesome, but it's $1,500. And you're getting it It's exactly right. There's a ton of track options in there for that. So, and the only reason why I would buy one is just to have a TFT screen so that I can see it better. Like the clarity is so much better with the TFT. It's what I love about the R1. Even though it's a tiny TFT, I like it because it's so much more clear. Kind of like the screen on the 636, quite frankly. Paul was saying, I've seen it on the GSXR 1000. It looks good. Yeah, Dude Mungus has got one on his. Chef saying mods own it. I've never seen it or have heard of it until now. It does look good. Talking to Cruz, Cruz looking it up. Yeah, it looks really good. AIM Systems. Let me see if I can find that for us real quick. I mean, it's, oh, let's see. AIM Systems. Oh, helps when you know what you're doing here. Okay, TFT GSXR 1000. There we go. Come on with yourself. And this is basically what it looks like. Let me, oh, it's my little bike. Okay. And look, it goes on and on here. Let me bring this bad boy back up. Here we go. MXPS. Look at that ridiculousness. Sick to death. Okay, so the thing is you can configure this thing pretty much however you like. And then it's got, let's see, it's asking us to do dark screen. You can do the light screen. I like the dark a little bit better. I prefer dark. It's easier on my eyeballs. But yeah, look how clean that is. That is sick to death. And then you can get into all the racing side of it is where it goes nuts. You've got your GPS add-on for doing track days. The list just goes on and on and on. I would probably go with the bottom setup myself. But anyway, yeah, and there's so many other things that this thing does. In fact, let me look at something real quick and see if it's got the, I mean, it's got the data logger built in, plug and play, GSXR 1000. You buy it. It practically installs itself. That's the silly thing about it. Integrated shift light array. I mean, it does a little of every. I know that this isn't doing anything for you guys. I'm just kind of talking about all the goofy stuff that it does. I mean, it's just, you can hook up a rear camera to it. Oh my God. The thing, it just does everything. It really does. So for a nerd like me, I mean, this is like a must have. Like, it's almost like, I would buy this and a slip on and not get it tuned and just have this on the bike. I mean, that would be like I would do. Let's see. Paul was saying, do it. And then you can be the only cool kid on the block with TFT and a Gixxer. No kidding, right? It is beautiful. Paul was saying, are we sure that the AIM Dash will be compatible with the 2027 model? I'm not sure. The only thing about the 2027 model is that it's going to have a separate section for wheelie control. It'll be lift control on that bike. I'm sure that it will not take AIM very long to make this thing available for the 27. We just don't know it yet, but it will not take very long for that bit of code to be written into that. That's an easy fix. I will say this, having wheelie control separate on the Gixxer is kind of cool. I prefer on the R1. I just turn it off on the R1. The Gixxer is a little bit different animal though. And it'll be interesting where that bike is going to like to be ridden in terms of settings, because of the amount of grunt that thing makes down low. But I will say this, the outgoing bike in A1 In other words, power A, which is the most, traction control 1, which is the least amount of wheelie intervention, if there is any, that bike would stand up pretty easily. And you could, I mean, I do little power wheelies with that thing, just kind of bring it up, 2 or 3 feet and just play with it in A1 mode. So it'll be interesting to see how a separate wheelie function works with that bike. So that would be the only little changeroo they would have to do to make sure that everything is compatible. But in terms of just being able to plug it in, I'm pretty sure that you could just plug this thing in. But it definitely works for 27 through 25, or 17 through 25. Let's see. Apollo's saying it's universal. The way they make this one is specific to the Gixxer. It's literally you pop it out and pop the other one back in. She's saying, hey Paisano, one of the problems I saw with this model is the configuration of the new Suzuki. Why not improve the technology with new systems, separate traction control, etc.? In Spain, bad sales. Here's the thing. It will have separate traction control settings. It's still going to have the 1 through 10, I believe. Let's get back to that. Let's see if there's anything on that. So I don't know that there is. Let me see if we've got anything in that. Advanced electronics features. Somebody got lied to on that one. Okay, hang on. Let me get back over here, guys. Hang on. Timeout. Hopefully you can see what I'm doing here when I'm kind of scrolling through the features on the new bike. While we're looking at our advanced features here, bidirectional quick shift, Suzuki launch control, roll torque controls, intelligent system that based on data received from the IMU and the wheel speed sensors calculates the bike's lane angle and speed to predetermine which level of power output is optimal for a given corner. It works in conjunction with traction control to help deliver a sense of stability through the corner. That's what the R1 does. And I've got to say that on the face of it, I wasn't a big fan. But now that I've been able to really kind of push the pace on the R1, I'm kind of a big fan of it. It's got some advances to the traction control, or the ABS rather. Electrical features. Hold on. What have we done here? Yeah, the black ground LCD multifunction instrument panel was inspired by the GSXR MotoGP dash from when? From how long ago? Let's see. The new lighter weight ABS control unit, which is kind of cool. It's got a new lithium-ion battery. That's in no doubt there to offset the weight of that exhaust. LED combo taillight and brake light assembly, low electrical draw. That's, I guess, good to know. So all LED lighting, 13.8 to 1 compression ratio. That's a lot. Anyway, there's a lot going on with that bike. Oh, she's saying, add in a factory model with all the bells and whistles. Chef saying R1, 15,000 RPM. Interesting, not going to lie. Yeah, but it makes peak power at 13.5. But although it does have some good over rev. One thing I will say about the R1 is that it does feel good on the right-hand side of the tach. So I'll be asking, do I think the GSXR 750 will ever get updates or will get any updates? I don't know, man. I've pondered that for a while. That's a hell of a bike the way that it sits. And it was a great bike when it was released in 2011. And it was a decent enough of an upgrade from its 2026 to 2010 counterparts. Will it ever get an update? I maybe not. That's a weird bike because the guys that like them love them. And when you go to the dealership to buy your Gixxer 750, you go to the dealership to buy that bike. My opinion to that bike is this: there's enough of those bikes in rotation on the used bike market that if you wanted an older bike, you can always get one. The carrying cost on a GSXR 750 is high. And what I mean by carrying cost, it's not just the bike that you're paying for. You got to pay insurance on that thing. And, the GSXR 750 costs as much as any leader bike that you would buy to insure. And so you couple that with, again, it's not an expensive bike per se, but it's kind of expensive for what you're getting, taking all of today's technology that's available, right, into account. And since we have modern sensibilities in terms of ergonomics and other things that the other super middleweights or that the super middleweights are offering, R9, RCR99, EV2 Panigale, and whoever else makes it in, it although the bike doesn't feel dated, it seems dated by comparison, and that's the big thing. So would it ever be updated? Maybe, but the loyalists won't want it, and the kids that are looking to buy it, which they do need to make it more youthful, will only accept it if it's got all of the new modern technology. I don't know that Suzuki will do that. Let's see. Oh, she's talking about old school for the Suzuki. I'm explaining too much. Inventory on list in one moment. Need to reduce this model list. Talking about the Chinese folks tearing into European brands. Yeah, that's going to be a thing. So, I'm kind of a fan of the Chinese brands, but they're offering up products that we don't know are necessarily on par with the European or Japanese bikes. CF Moto has proven that they are on par, but the rest of the crew, not so sure. Oh, DM saying, yeah, AIM Systems has an adapter for different models. Usually that's all it takes. Yep. The one that we were just looking at, that's one that I know is specific. The case is specifically made for the Zook to just pop right in there. But yeah, they do have other systems, and you can get the adapter and it works great. It's a beautiful thing. So Swabby, yeah, there was a lot of us, man. Look, what's funny, I say funny, it's not funny, it's kind of sad. There was a time where we were teased that the middleweights were going to get updated, and the middleweights were going to get updated either in 2026 or 2027. And that ended up not at all being the case. It ended up being the leader bike that was changed, which none of us saw coming because there wasn't a reason to do anything with the leader bike. Leader bikes had kind of started to fall off anyway in terms of popularity. The insurance cost is a big turnoff for a leader bike. And so, these middleweights are really coming on strong. The R9 was being talked about already at that point. And the V2 Panigale was being talked about at that point. There was a lot of market indicators saying that this middleweight thing was going to be huge. And so the smart money for about 2 or 3 months was that Suzuki was going to do something. And then what's his face, the head Suzuki guy, said, yeah, watch out for EICMA 2025. We're going to be, or 2026, we're going to be announcing something big, and was alluding to that for the middleweights, but it ended up not happening. So it's a bummer. She's saying in Europe, the gas is crazy, $8 a liter. Good Lord. Let's see. The price is not American free gasoline, not resealed. Let's see, 600 or 750. What is the expectation for these Japanese people to be full tank around $80? I don't know, but $8 a liter is ridiculous. Be rolling around on a scooter. She's saying, I might end up buying a GSXR 1100 with a 750 frame, my dream bike, by the way. A lot of guys love those. I was saying, wow, I guess EU market is a lot different than the US. It's just they like small cars, we like big cars. Where are you at for $8, $8 US a liter? That seems like really high, even for European prices. She's saying ZX Moto put a lot of technology better than Ducati. A lot of people here in America are safe for restriction, but moving to Europe plus the cost of gas, insurance, etc. Supply chain. Yeah, she's saying love my Busa. By the way, love me some Busa. Oh, he's in Spain. Yeah, dude. I knew, dude. How do y'all? I don't understand how these folks get elected overseas, man. They are just getting choked out. Um, but yeah, I get it. Lots of regulations, lots of going on over there for that. Oh, crew saying, checking in with Chef saying, I've always loved the Busa as well. Even when I was a teen, the thought of having a Busa was awesome. Let me tell you something. Habusas are one of the most, it just leave it stock. Don't do anything to, I mean, put some cans on it to lighten it up, but just leave the thing stock. Hayabusa is one of the most like fun, happiest bikes you could ever ride. I'm not kidding when I say that. The Gen 3, the latest generation, Gen 4, whatever it is, it's yeah, Gen 3. It's easily the just the friendliest bike you could ever ride. Yeah, they're fast. And they make torque the way that you wish a leader bike can make torque. It's such an effortless way of going about business. But those bikes are so good, you forget that they can be fast. That gray bike, which is still at the dealership, drives me nuts, is one of the just I may end up doing another revisit on that bike. I like that bike so much. Uh, yeah, she's saying crazy taxes over more taxes. That's terrible. Yeah, Spain. I've never been, but I hear Spain is absolutely beautiful. Crew saying I just started riding this year. Started on a GSX-8R, great bike. Then went and bought a ZX6R, another good bike. Next bike will be the 27 GSXR 1K or ZX10. Try them on for size, see which one fits you better. They're distinctly different in terms of size and fit. So whichever one of those two bikes fits you better, get that one. And I know I say the ZX doesn't really put torque down like a Gixxer. No leader bike puts torque down like a Gixxer. You ride a Gixxer 1K, at least the older version, and then ride an R1. Even piped and tuned, the R1 feels like a middleweight through the mid-range versus the Gixxer. That's not a bad thing. It's one of the reasons why I like the R1 so much. Crew's liking the 26, the special edition. Yep. Sold a couple of those through the dealership. She's saying, I hear more H2 Super Turbo for next year. Regular engine for this new model, 200 horsepower only. Maybe. They may be restricting that one. I wouldn't doubt it. But guys, I just realized we are a couple of hours into the show. This was a fun one. We go ahead and wrap it up. So with that, guys, listen, yeah, looking forward to the 27 Gixxer 1000. This is going to be a lot of fun. That bike, near and dear to my heart. Love that thing. There's a reason, I guess, maybe why I haven't ever taken down my suspension setup for the standard model. It's a great bike. And with the right mods, it can be a ton of fun. And hopefully this new proactive rider aid thing hopefully that works out to where it doesn't lose any of that fun rawness that we all got so familiar with the Gixxer. I have a feeling it's going to be great, but we'll only know when we get a chance to sample one. But with that, guys, I got to go ahead and wrap it up. Listen, appreciate you guys. DM, thank you so much for the support. Crew, we got Pilo, DM's checking in. Who else did we have in here? We had, I'll start to forget. Pilo, DM, everybody, all my crew members are in. Thank you guys so much for this. There's Bruce. Thank you guys so much for the support. But with that, I got to wrap it up. Listen, get out there and do something cool for somebody. Chances are they need it way more than you know. And I hope to catch y'all on the next one. Y'all take it easy. There we go. Now take it easy.